what's going on to everybody out there in YouTube land? Coming at you guys again. I know this is like, what, 3 videos in a week? Crazy, right? I'm outdoing myself. I wanted to come at you guys with a series this week about the divine Pymander. Now, those of you who know me know I'm very much into esotericism, Hermeticism, magic, the occult in general. I'm not a religious, quote-unquote, religious person by any means. And do I believe in alchemy and all of these different things? No. But I do find it extremely interesting. Being a amateur philosopher and historian, this kind of stuff is what I live and die for. With that being said, I'm going to jump right into this. Oh yeah, by the way, for those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Gator from the South. I run this channel, and if you want to go ahead and subscribe, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and like the video. There's going to be great content like this and much more coming soon. But like I said, let's go ahead and jump into the video. Now, who is Hermes Trismegistus? The thrice great Hermes. Now, we're going to get into this a little bit later in this, but I want to give you guys a little heads up right away. Hermes Trismegistus is a Greek name given to an old deity that's been written about since before deities were deities. Before deities, there's this thing called euhemerism. And if you look that up, a euhemerist is someone that believes that these people that we talk about when we talk about Zeus, when we talk about Thor and Apollo, that we're actually talking about real people. A euhemerist is somebody who believes that a real person was deified after death. Maybe it was a great hero, a great warrior, but after death they were deified in the manner of Theseus or Hercules to become a god. And after a while, you forget that these people that were been quote-unquote deified are actually real people, and they just become mythological. They become mythologized. Is that a word? I don't know. As Zeus or as Gilgamesh or one of these famous characters from old. Now, the Greek name Hermes is really the god Thoth, as we see here. I'll go ahead and start reading. Origin and identity. Hermes Trismegistus may have been associated with the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Greeks in the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt recognized the equivalence of Hermes and Thoth through the Interpretatio Gracia. Let's find out what that is. And the Interpretatio Gracia is the interpretation by means of Greek models. It's a discourse used to interpret and to attempt to understand the mythology and religions of other cultures. Basically, comparative methodology using ancient Greek religious concept practices deities and myths as equivalencies for shared characteristics. So basically, they adopted another culture's myths and their deities, and they just put their own names on them, i.e. what we were just talking about there, how they adopted Thoth from the Egyptians and named him Hermes, their version of what Thoth is. Okay, so consequently, the two gods were worshipped as one in what had been the Temple of Thoth at Kaminu. I have to pronounce these names a lot better, right? Which was known as the Hellenistic period as Hermopolis. Hermes, the Greek god of interpretive communication, was combined with Thoth, the Egyptian god of wisdom. The Egyptian priest and polymath Imhotep had been deified long after his death and therefore assimilated to Thoth in the classical Hellenistic periods. The renowned scribe Amenhotep and a wise man Theos had co-equal deities of wisdom, science, and medicine, and thus were placed alongside Imhotep in shrines dedicated to Thoth Hermes during the Ptolemaic kingdom. Now, what we find here is these names that keep popping up. Imhotep, Amenhotep. Why are we having these classical Egyptian names popping up during this romantic time in Greece. Well, what was happening in the time period where the Greeks and the Egyptians were not necessarily friends, not necessarily enemies, but there was war constantly around this Mediterranean area. And having traveled the Mediterranean, crossed the Atlantic, and traveled the Mediterranean Sea, you can see exactly how that would happen. These countries are not that far apart. Like you can literally see from Morocco, Italy, or France. Or you can see the other side of the coast. With that being said, you can see how these nations stayed at war and how they had such constant contact with each other. And the spreading of ideas and cultures is so fascinating to me. Now let's continue reading. The Mycenaean Greek referred to a deity or semi-deity called Tyroseroi, Trisheros, or Trice, triple hero. And he was found on 2 linear B clay tablets at Pylos. Now let's see what the linear B clay tablet looks like. If it'll pull up here. Linear B clay tablet was used in a form of Mycenaean Greek, the earliest attested form of Greek writing. So this is what that would look like. The earliest form of Greek writing paying homage to Egyptian deities. All right, and it could be connected to the later epithet thrice great, which they call Hermes Trismegistus. They call him the thrice great, applied to Hermes Thoth. On the aforementioned Pi T9-113 tablet, which we just saw, as well as other linear B tablets found in Pylos, Konos, and Thebes, whatever you want to call it, Thebes. I've heard it pronounced Thebes most of my life, but you know, you listen to these historians nowadays and they'll say Thebes, all kind of stuff. I guess it depends on where you are. There appears the name of the deity Hermes as Imaha on linear B, that tablet, but not in any apparent connection with the Cicero, the thrice great. This interpretation of poorly stood Mycenaean material is disputed, since Hermes Trismegistus is not referenced in any of the copious sources before he emerges in Hellenistic Egypt. Now, Cicero enumerates several deities referred to as Hermes. Now let's find out who Cicero is. Now this guy, Marcus Tullius Cicero, let's find out. He is a Roman statesman, an orator, lawyer, and philosopher who served as consul in the year 63 BC. He came from a wealthy municipal family of the Roman equestrian order and is considered one of Rome's great orators and prose stylists. All right, now we know who that is. Let's find out why he's being mentioned in this. Now this philosopher enumerates several deities referred to as Hermes. A fourth Mercury, Hermes, was the son of the Nile, whose name may not be spoken by the Egyptians, and the fifth, who worshipped by the people of Phineus in Arcadia, is said to have killed Argus Panoptes. I don't know who that is. We're not going to go there. And for this reason, to have fled to Egypt. Now, there's a common theme I see in a lot of ancient mythologies and writings. There's always some kind of a fleeing to Egypt, fleeing to the Mediterranean. Even in some of the Sumerian epics, when we talk about Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and how they had to go fight Humbaba in the Black Forest, and how they had to travel down the Nile, and how they had to go through Tyre, and all of these different places. They had to go to Tyre to fight this demon, and how the only way to get there would be to pass by Egypt. Just incredibly fascinating when you read into all of this stuff. Let's continue. Let's see here. Where were we? I apologize. Oh, and to have given the Egyptians their laws and alphabet. It is whom the Egyptians call Tit. Let's find out Tit. I'm interested in this one. Thoth, why not, right? Wouldn't it be? The most likely interpretation of this passage is as two variants on the same syncretism of Greek Hermes and Egyptian Thoth, or sometimes other gods. The fourth, where Hermes turned out actually to have been the son of the Nile, i.e. a native god, being viewed from the Egyptian perspective. The fifth, who went from Greece to Egypt, being viewed from the Greek Akkadian perspective. Both of these early references in Cicero, most ancient Trismegistus material is from the early centuries AD, corroborate the view that the thrice great Hermes originated in Hellenistic Egypt through syncretism. That's another big word. We're going to cover this topic as well. Syncretism is a huge topic. I don't know if you guys listen to Santos Bonacci or any of the great alchemists that are on YouTube spinning their yarns, but we're going to follow some of his stuff as well. Okay, through syncretism between Greek and Egyptian gods. The Hermetica refer most often to Thoth and Amun, and we're going to cover Amun as well. Now that's a great subject there. Greek mythology is so interesting because it lays the foundation, not Greek, I apologize, Egyptian mythology is so interesting because it lays the foundation for most mythologies around the world. That and Sumerian mythology, and they are pretty much one and the same. The Hermetic literature among the Egyptians, which was concerned with conjuring spirits and animating statues, informed the oldest Hellenistic writings on Greco-Babylonian astrology and newly developed practice of alchemy. In parallel tradition, Hermetic philosophy rationalized and systematized religious cult practices, offering an adept a means of personal ascension from the constraints of physical being. This latter tradition has led to the confusion of Hermeticism with Gnosticism, which was developing contemporaneously. Now, Gnosticism is another great topic. We're going to cover that. If you've read the Pistis Sophia or any of the Nag Hammadi library, any of the Egyptian codex, it is very interesting. Gnosticism is a sect of Christianity which claims knowing. It's quite literally one of the first sects of Christianity. The Essenes were Gnostics. Let it be told, most of the apostles, quote unquote apostles, were Gnostic in their writing, in their speech, in their just their whole way of speaking. But I think that over the years we have dumbed a lot of things down. We don't use words like demiurge. We don't use words like gnosis. We don't use the word like aeons or Platonism anymore. So the Bible has been translated, not only translated, but transliterated. What is a transliteration? Let me explain that quickly. The word Jesus is not the name of a Messiah, by no means, because you can't translate a name. If his name was Yahshua or Yasha or Yeshua, however you pronounce it, then that would be his name. If a person's name is David in English, I'm not going to call him Davud just because I'm in Iraq, or Dayud. I would still pronounce his name David, even though I would write it in Arabic Dayud. I might say D-A-U-D. There is the name Dayud. There's the name Davud, but that's not the way you say his person's name. If his English name is David, you call him David. If his Arabic name is Daoud, you call him Daoud, right? There is no translation for a name. What a transliteration is when a certain culture can't pronounce a name, or they don't have that certain letter in the alphabet. That's when they pronounce it differently. And then that pronunciation basically just takes over as the name. Like Jesus. A Mexican would say Jesus. He wouldn't say Jesus because that sound does not exist in their language. So they're going to say Jesus. And that is, to them, their Jesus. Just the same way our Jesus is the Jewish people, even though the Jews don't claim him, they would be his Yahshua or Yoshua. It's very interesting. But just to be clear, the Hermetic literature among the Egyptians, which was considered, we read that, I apologize. Oh, and this was very interesting as well, how it was speaking about how the Egyptian literature and basically the Hellenistic literature of the time, the Greco-Babylonian astrology and the alchemy, was really speaking about a lot of physical things with no practice behind them. And how when Hermeticism came along, when Thoth, Imhotep, came along with his systems of writing and math and methodology, basically systemized religious cult practices. It's very interesting. I didn't even know that myself. And he offered an adept, which is a very it's not a very occult word, but it is a cult word. An adept is somebody who is adept. You have a novice, and there are different names for these, and I don't know all of the occult names, but I know um, a neophyte you would call a novice. That's why I guess when you join a Greek fraternity, you have probates because they're not yet neophytes because they're probating in. And then once you actually become a neophyte, you are a neophyte. And once you pass that level, you become an adept or well, there's the initiate, the probate, the initiate, the neophyte, and an adept. And when you become an adept, I guess that means that you are adept at it, that you know what you're doing. You are not only know what you're talking about, you're practicing it now. Just like a MD, a medical doctor, doesn't know everything. He practices. That's why they call it a medical practice. He's literally practicing on you. Same concept. He has become an adept. He is no longer in the learning. It's college, basically same thing. You go to college and you learn the application of something, and then when you learn the application, you actually do the practical application. Practicing. At any rate, let's continue. As a divine source of wisdom, Hermes Trismegistus was credited with tens of thousands of highly esteemed writings, which were reputed to be of immense antiquity. Clement of Alexandria was under the impression that Egyptians had 42 sacred writings by Hermes, writings that detail the training of Egyptian priests. Siegfried Morans had suggested in Egyptian religion the reference to quote the reference to Thoth's authorship is based on ancient tradition. The figure 42 probably stems from the number of Egyptian nomes and thus conveyed the notion of completeness. The Neoplatonic writers took up Clement's 42 essential text. Let's find out what a nome is. A nome is basically a territorial division, so it's a county or a state, basically. Okay? The Hermetica is a category of papyri containing spells and initiatory induction procedures. The dialogue called Asclepius, after the Greek god of healing. Now, take note of that name, Asclepius. We're going to be touching on that subject later on as well in our lecture series. After the Greek god of healing, describes the art of imprisoning the souls of demons or angels in statues with the help of herbs, gems, and odors, so that the statue could speak and engage in prophecy. In other papyri, there are recipes for constructing such images and animating them, such as images are to be fashioned hollow so as to enclose a magic inscribed on a gold leaf. Fascinating. Now, the thrice great. We're going to get to this now. What does the thrice great mean? Fowden asserts that the first datable occurrence of the epithet thrice great are the legatio of Athenagoras of Athens, and in a fragment from Philo of Byblos. However, in a later work, Copenhaver reports that this epithet is first found in the minutes of a meeting of the Council of the Ibis cult, held in 172 BC near Memphis in Egypt. Now, this is important because Memphis was basically the headquarters of this new. I was reading about this the other day when they actually brought the Egyptian culture to Greece, and after Greece had basically conquered Egypt, late 2nd century BC. by Alexander the Great. They brought a lot of their culture there as well, and Memphis was founded as one of these cultural strongholds. But actually, the Greeks ended up adopting the Egyptian terminology, the Egyptian writing system, the Egyptian religion or cult, if you could say, and Thoth, Imhotep, Hermes became the god of Memphis. So that's very important here. Hart explains that the epithet is derived from an epithet of Thoth found at the Temple of Esna. Thoth the Great, the Great, the Great. The dates of Hermes Trismegistus' sojourn in Egypt during his last incarnation is not now known, but it has been fixed at the early days of the earliest dynasties of Egypt, long before the days of Moses. Some authorities regard him as a contemporary of Abraham, and claim that Abraham acquired a portion of his mystical knowledge from Hermes himself, and that's from the Kybalion. And if you know about esotericism, you have heard of the Kybalion before. We'll get into that on a later lecture. Many Christian writers, including, I'm not going to name all those names, considered Hermes Trismegistus to be a wise pagan prophet who foresaw the coming of Christianity. They believed in an existence of Prisca Theologia, a single true theology that threads through all religions. Now that is also syncretism in a nutshell. Like I said, we'll cover that. It was given by God to man in antiquity and passed through a series of prophets, which included Zoroaster and Plato, in order to demonstrate the verity of the Prisca Theologia. Christians appropriated the Hermetic teachings for their own purposes. By this account, Hermes Trismegistus was either a contemporary of Moses or third in line of men named Hermes, i.e. Enoch, Noah, and the Egyptian priest king who is known as Hermes Trismegistus, on account of being the great priest, philosopher, and king. This last account of Hermes Trismegistus received that epithet is derived from statements on the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, that he knows the three parts of the wisdom of the whole universe. Another explanation in the Suda, 10th century, is that he was called Trismegistus on account of his praise of the Trinity, saying that there is one divine nature in the Trinity. I don't know about that one. I've never heard that one before at all. I'm sure that's going to need a citation. I guess this came from Copenhagen, Hermetica. I'm not sure. We will get into the Hermetic writings and the Hermetic revival in a while. I wanted to get into this, touch on this, the Islamic tradition, and how interwoven this is into, pretty much everything that we, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it's any religion around the world, really. Thoth really plays a role in it. Let's go here in Islamic tradition. Sayyid Ahmed Amiruddin has pointed out that early Christian and Islamic traditions call Hermes Trismegistus the builder of the pyramids of Giza, and has a major place in Islamic tradition. Now, this is, to my understanding, true, because, like I said, we keep going back to Thoth, we keep going back to Imhotep. We know that Imhotep was the vizier that helped build King Dozier's temple, the first temple, and we know that this temple was incomplete to him, that he wanted to do a better job. So he ended up building Dozier's son's temple as well. And now we have the pyramids of Giza. And those weren't even the first pyramids. The first pyramids were the ones that, like I said, Imhotep didn't like. He made these, but he really didn't like them. The one, i.e., look up the ones for Dozier, King Dozier, one of the first kings of Egypt. Let's keep going. He writes, Hermes Trismegistus is mentioned in the Quran in verse 19, 56, and 57. Quote, contains the oldest documented source for the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, translated by Jabir ibn Hayyan for the Hashemite Caliph of Baghdad, identified as Sufi, was a student of Jafar al-Sadiq. I don't know who any of these people are. The writings of Hermes were considered sacred as an inheritance and from the prophets. These writings were recorded and subsequently translated into Arabic and from Arabic into Persian, Turkish, Hebrew, Russian, and English. In these writings, Hermes was identified as Idris, the infallible prophet who traveled to outer space from Egypt and to heaven when he brought back a cache of objects from the Eden of Adam and the black stone where he landed on earth in India. According to the Arab genealogists, the Prophet Muhammad, who is also believed to have traveled to the heavens on the night of Isra and Miraj, if you know the Quran, you know that beautiful story. Now, according to Arab genealogists, Muhammad is a direct descendant of Hermes Trismegistus. I guess someone here wrote, quote, "As for Idris, he is in the genealogical chain of the Prophet Muhammad, except according to one genealogist, Ibn Asik says that he was the first to write. He was the first who wrote with the pen. There was a span of 380 years between him." So very fascinating stuff. Very fascinating stuff. In the Baha writings, the Baha'i faith is an interesting one. It's another form of syncretism, to my understanding, basically New Age stuff where basically all religions are one. Their leader, Baha'u'llah, was jailed for his beliefs, and he ended up in jail writing a series of treatises. He called himself the second coming of Prophet Isa, or Prophet Jesus, or whatever you want to call him, Yeshua. And these writings were extremely beautiful, and he detailed basically how to live in harmony with yourself and with nature and with people here on planet Earth, and how to break this cycle of incarnation, and that no religion is wrong. Basically, live a right life, believe what you want to, because at the end of the day, we're all praying to the same God, was his belief. And that he was that messenger, that prophet like Jesus, who was sent to tell people this. Very interesting stuff. So according to this, Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, identifies Idris with Hermes in the tablets. So very interesting. So there we have it. I'm not going to go too much farther on this. We have a lot much more to get to, which will not be gotten to tonight. And I just want to show you guys one of my sources here, one of my favorite sources in the world. It's called Sacred Text. Very simple. You can find it by typing in Sacred Text on your web browser, and you will click Alchemy, and they're going to pull up an ebook that has been scanned, most likely, or even typed directly into this library. It is a beautiful library, one of my favorite. You want to read about the glories of the world, the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, what we were just talking about, here it is. You want to read some more esoteric text. You want to read about Icelandic mythology. The poetic Eddas are right here. The Edda prose, the Old Norse poems, the story of the Vol songs, one of my favorite books. You want to know about Freemasonry. Well, who else to learn it from but Albert Pike? Morals and Dogma. This is the book that they give Freemasons when they join Freemasonry. So, it's these type of websites and these type of libraries that are essential to understanding more about what we call culture, religion, politics, history, anthropology, philosophy. If you're interested in these kind of things and you want to know more, stay tuned to this series. We're going to be touching on a lot of topics. I know that I was stumbling over words this whole time, but I hope you guys enjoyed listening. I'm going to work a lot harder on reading clearly, my diction, so that you guys will enjoy these videos. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. See you guys next time.